So the Secretary of State has announced actions to combat the global censorship industrial complex. The Trump administration is using the adverse foreign policy impact clause of basically visa admissions law to bar some of the Europeans that it says are pressuring tech firms to censor American viewpoints online. Let's get into this. Here's one of the guys, Imran Ahmed, who is the CEO of the Center for Countering Digital Hate. Here's another guy, Thierry Breton, who was France's EU commissioner. And here's this British lady, Claire Melford. We're gonna get into all of them. This is gonna be fun. Claire Melford's thing is the Global Disinformation Index. Marco Rubio says that, quote, organized efforts to coerce American platforms to censor, demonetize, and suppress American viewpoints that they oppose. And this visa ban means that these people, they can't come to the US to lobby US politicians. And Imran Ahmed currently lives in Washington, D.C. I found homie's LinkedIn profile. In fact, this action makes him deportable. One of the main things for the Center for Countering Digital Hate is their so-called disinformation dozen. This was a big-time effort during the COVID pandemic to deplatform people. And what's important about the Center for Countering Digital Hate, which is a nonprofit but not a government organization, is that it actually kind of is a government organization because it's really closely linked to Keir Starmer, who is the Prime Minister of the UK. Because this guy, Morgan McSweeney, who is currently Keir Starmer's chief of staff, founded it. And one of its annual priorities is to kill Musk's Twitter, which they did by organizing an advertising boycott. Now you might think, why would Lego care what Center for Countering Digital Hate has to say? Well, they're gonna care a lot more if the founder is the chief of staff to the Prime Minister of the UK. And this goes back to this whole thing in 2021 with Biden. And you can see in this little highlight that I've made here that Biden's people were actually citing the disinformation dozen in calls to regulate social media platforms. So what would happen here is the Center for Combating Digital Hate, they would do their research, give it to the White House. The White House would then do things like they have emails of them pressuring Meta to deplatform people using this supposed research. And it's not going to be good for them that they specifically call for deplatforming as a number 2 priority, RFK Jr. And here's Thierry Breton. He is the architect of this Digital Services Act, which the EU has used to do things like fine X 120 million euros. And I think honestly it says a lot about Europe and where all this stuff is going, that in 2024, the EU fined US tech companies 3.8 billion euros. Meanwhile, public internet tech companies paid only $3.2 billion in income tax. So they made more in fining US tech companies than all their public companies in the technology sector paid in income tax in Europe. And under Biden, the State Department was actually funding this. So we were sending taxpayer money to funding this disinformation index that then warned advertisers to avoid publications like Reason, which is honestly just a kind of fact-based libertarian magazine. I mean, maybe liberals don't agree with it, but this is certainly not the craziest publication in the world. So this is this lady's project, Claire Melford. And they would create this index and then send it to advertisers and say, don't advertise with these people. And you talk about a platform, when you put her at the World Economic Forum, maybe the advertisers are going to listen because you're kind of using the government to put pressure on advertisers through these NGOs. You're basically allowing the NGO to be a regulator. But regulators can do things that governments can't do, like go to advertisers and tell them not to do things. And the way that they would build these exclusionary lists were through an advisory panel. And one of the people on the advisory panel for the Global Disinformation Index is Ann Applebaum, who's the person who dismissed the Hunter Biden laptop story as not interesting. Good record, Ann. And honestly, hilariously, the left-wing NGO crew is saying that this is an example of the US retreating from internet governance. Internet governance, you say? Like, cracking down on people, arresting 30 people of them a day for offenses like retweets, or making us all click those little cookie banners to let us know that websites are tracking us? Yeah, we figured that out by now. So Imran, Thierry, and Claire, and a few other people will be coming to the US for a while.